Beloved child, the first pain never arrives to teach you hatred. It comes to awaken you from the dreams you entrusted to hearts that were never capable of guarding them. Do you remember that moment when you placed your trust in someone and believed that if you only loved enough, all bitterness would melt away? You were not wrong to love, you only anchored yourself in the wrong place. From the very beginning, there was a small voice in your heart whispering, "Slow down." Yet you placed your faith in the smile, in the temporary warmth, in pleasant words, rather than in the whisper I planted within your soul to protect you. I do not condemn you for hoping. I only want you to see this. Not every call is an invitation into the light. Some hands reach out not to lift you, but to cling to your breath and turn it into fuel for the emptiness within them. You did not see it then, because a gentle heart often sees potential where there is only desire. You rushed into that relationship like a person entering a dark room with a candle in hand, believing that a single flame could illuminate an abandoned house. But you forgot that a single gust of wind from the other person was enough to extinguish the flame you were guarding with all your sincerity. And when the darkness fell, you immediately turned against yourself. Perhaps I am the problem. Perhaps I asked too much. Perhaps I was not patient enough. I saw that moment as one sees a child who falls, then quickly tries to reason that the earth must have been angry. No, my child, the wound you carry is not an accusation against your worth. It is an alarm sounding to stop you from forcing a broken soul to become your anchor. The one who shattered your trust did not do so because you were weak, but because they saw your gentleness and decided it was an easy place to plant hooks of fear, control, and self-validation. You placed what was sacred into their hands without asking whether they were strong enough to hold it, and when their hands trembled, your heart fell. I do not speak this to make you feel foolish. I speak it so you understand love does not make you pray, but placing it wrongly turns you into a traveler entering the desert without water. It is not the desert that kills, it is your own unpreparedness. In the moment of betrayal, you thought I was silent, but I was not. I simply waited until you reached the brink where pain would force you to see clearly. I whispered through your intuition. I sent warnings, the strange uneasiness when you were near them, the nameless exhaustion when you heard them speak, the sensation that your very life was being drained just to sustain their presence. You felt all of it, yet you placed your hope in the idea that they will change. I put warning in your heart, but you put salvation in another human being. When you began to wither, I did not abandon you, I only let the ground shake just enough to make you stop. Because you would not stop for wisdom, you would only stop for collapse. That is why the pain felt so deep that you believed it was destroying your worth. But in truth, the wound was not killing you, it was severing the tangled ropes you had bound around your own heart to keep them from leaving. You asked me, why must I go through this? And I answered with silence, not to punish you, but so you could hear the heartbeat of your own soul. You lived long in a relationship where your very presence was shrinking. You bent yourself so they would feel comfortable. You accepted less so they would not run. You buried your inner voice so that the fragile image of love you imagined would remain intact. When betrayal came, I did not stand by as a spectator. I stood before you, placed my hand upon your heart and said, now you must choose me, not them. But my message came gently. While you desired a storm to shatter everything, I did not deliver the storm. I let truth rise like a mask slipping from a face. Because if I destroyed everything for you, you would never learn to recognize warning signs with your own eyes. I want you to grow, not to live by fear, but by discernment. You believed betrayal was evidence that you were unlovable. But betrayal only proves that you entrusted your treasure to someone who could not hold it. A person who does not know how to love themselves cannot love you, they only know how to consume your love. An empty soul sees you as nourishment, not as a gift. They do not come to walk beside you, they come to fill their void. And even so, I do not advise you to hate them. I only remind you, do not turn compassion into chains. You were created to love deeply, but not to sacrifice yourself until you disappear. Pain does not arrive to define you, it arrives to dismantle the lie that you must endure suffering to be loved. And when you see that with your own eyes, you will recognize that I stood beside you from the beginning, not to stop you from trying, but to receive you when you fell. You hurt not because my love was lacking, but because you placed human love into the position only I can bear. You were like a fragile clay vessel filled with boiling water. The vessel does not shatter because the one who poured it is cruel, but because its nature was never made to withstand that heat. When you place expectation upon people, souls still searching for themselves, still bound by fear, still bleeding from wounds they never tended, you put in their hands a weight they cannot hold. I saw how you trembled, trying to preserve that connection, not because you lacked love, but because you were trying to turn a temporary soul into a lifelong sanctuary. No one can become your temple unless I am the foundation within you. People may hold your hand for a season, but they are not large enough to cradle your whole soul. And when they cannot bear the weight, you call it betrayal, but in truth, it is simply the boundary of human capacity. There were times you looked at them as you would look at the sun, hoping that warmth would carry you through the cold season. But they were only oil lamps bright while you poured your fire into them. Silent the moment you ran out of flame, you held on to them as a sailor clings to broken driftwood, believing it to be salvation, when in truth you were tying yourself to something that was never meant to float. When their affection shifted, you felt abandoned. When their promises collapsed, you believed you were unworthy. But you did not see what I saw. They did not betray you to destroy you. They betrayed you to protect the fragile parts of themselves. They can love only at the level they understand love. They can be faithful only to the extent they have known faithfulness. You placed your eternal heart in the hands of one who knew only how to hold the present moment. When disappointment came, you concluded that love itself is deceit. But love does not die, only your aim was wrong. Remember borrowed shoes, you tread carefully. You walk gently, yet they still blister your feet. Not because you walked incorrectly, but because the shoes were never made for you. Some souls in your life are the same. They are not evil, not malicious at their core, but you asked them to provide what they were never designed to carry. You tried to shrink yourself to fit the space they could offer, but your soul is not fashioned to fold. You told yourself, perhaps I only need to love a bit more. But love is not the bending of truth until you disappear. When a shoe does not fit, the blister teaches you that the path is not yours. Likewise, when you love someone who cannot hold your heart, the wound teaches you they are not your foundation. I do not blame you for trying. I only want you to learn discernment. Not every hand extended is strong enough to hold your soul. My child, there are people I allow to pass through your life not to remain, but to become lessons. They teach you the limits of human hearts, the wisdom of not pouring your whole sky into a jar made of glass. You saw the cracks many times, yet you believed that if you tried hard enough, you could mend them with sincerity. The problem was never the glue, but the material. Human hearts are not designed to hold the reins of your own. They are not steady enough to carry the deepest places in your soul. Even the good break their promises. Even the sincere grow weak. The more you try to make them your pillar, the more you crush them beneath the weight you hand them. No one can be God in your life except me. If you turn human love into your final refuge, every affection becomes expectation, and every expectation becomes disappointment when they cannot bear it. Not because they are cruel, but because you are asking of them what only I can give. But listen carefully. My child, I am not calling you to become cold, suspicious, or withdrawn. I am teaching you the right order of love. You love people with kindness. compassion, respect, but you place absolute trust, safety, and your core worth in me. When the foundation rests on me, people may enter or leave your life without destroying your heart. When I am at the center, you no longer need them to prove that you are worthy of love, because your existence in me is already proof. When you withdraw your heart from fragile hands and place it into mine, you will discover something. The pain that once shattered you becomes strength that helps you discern, and from that place, you learn to love without losing yourself. A wounded heart is not evidence that you have failed. It is a signal that the soul is shifting away from temporary love in order to learn to return to me. Pain does not come to slam the door shut, but to open a path you never dared to walk. When a relationship fractures, you often see it as a collapse of your very identity. But in my eyes, it is only an old shell that no longer has space for who you are becoming. There are times when you try to repair what has already decayed, not because you believe it will live again, but because you fear the vastness ahead. Yet in that vastness, a new life awaits you, one that does not demand you to shrink in order to be kept, that does not require you to silence your heart so others will not be inconvenienced. The wound is a reminder that you were not created to be a container for demands, but the soil upon which I plant life. When you place expectations upon hearts not strong enough to lift them, the weight of those expectations will crush you. Some people come to borrow warmth, some to borrow light, and you think the purpose of love is to save them with your own flesh and blood. That is how weary souls become victims of temporary love. Betrayal is not a judgment against you, it is the exposure of their limits. You are not useless, you simply placed your heart in hands that were not designed to hold it. I have never defined your worth according to whether someone was mature enough to love you. I define your worth by the fact that you belong to me, by origin, by breath, by the deepest nature of your soul. There were times you forced yourself to be strong, not to stand tall, but to keep others from abandoning you. That fear caused you to fold. You silenced your voice, strangled your emotions, ignored your intuition, and when they finally turned away, you looked at yourself as proof of defeat. But here is the truth: only those who do not see the light in you will leave you. Those who arrive in the right season will never require you to shrink. They will walk toward you because you are yourself. The wound is only the marker that you have wandered too far from the essence I placed within you, and now it is time to return to alignment. Not to close your doors, but to learn how to open them in the right direction. Pain slows you, but it also deepens your vision. Your softest places are where I touch you, not to scold, but to correct your compass. You once used the acceptance of others to measure your worth, and when that acceptance faded, you believed your worth disappeared with it. But worth never changed, only the surface was stripped away. Like a rotted roof torn off by the storm, what remains is the foundation. I do not let winds pass through your life to destroy you, but to show you which foundation is worth rebuilding. A heart may be wounded, but it is still the soil I love. The cracks are not the scars of failure, they are the openings through which light enters. When you dare to look, when you dare to walk away from places that are no longer home, the wound stops being an ending and becomes a testimony. In me, brokenness is a phase of transformation from loving to be kept, to loving because you are already kept. You were not created to be embraced by everyone. You were created to live rightly under my gaze. There are seasons when you believe your worth will bloom if enough people acknowledge you, if their smiles become the air you breathe. But your soul does not grow from applause. If the eyes of the world are your sun, you will constantly twist yourself to chase each fleeting beam. When they turn away, your heart will descend into night. I did not form you to live by the glances of those who come and go, but to stand still beneath my gaze, unchanging, unfading, unshaken by their fears. I call you by name, not by compliment. I place you on a journey, not on a stage. Your worth is not measured by how many doors open to you, but by the fact that I chose you long before you knew how to knock. There is a story you must remember when Samuel was sent to Jesse's house to anoint the future king. Every eye turned toward the older brothers, strong, tall, seemingly qualified to lead a nation. No one looked toward the young shepherd boy in the wilderness. Even the prophet leaned toward appearance. Until I said, I do not look as man looks. David was not chosen for the impression he made. He did not step into destiny because the crowd recognized him. He stepped into it because I had already seen his heart before anyone knew he existed. Even his own family did not call him into the room when the opportunity arrived, but I called him. When you live under my gaze, human silence is not rejection. It is the space I use to highlight the child I have chosen. You are exhausted from trying to become a version of yourself that others find acceptable. You have muted your voice, buried your true desires, lowered righteous dreams simply so you would not disturb. But a heart reduced to permission is not a heart that knows how to love. It is a heart begging to survive. People want you to be convenient, agreeable, easy to compensate for their deficiencies. They demand silence as proof of humility. They call shrinking sensitivity. They praise endurance as virtue. You obey not because you believe, but because you fear abandonment. I did not create you to be accepted at such a cheap price. On the path I have written for you, being unwelcome is not failure. It is evidence that you were not born to enter a room with ceilings too low. The acceptance of the many is an easy road to breathe on. Yet it is the road that leaves the soul without air. You have lived this when you spoke what was true. They curled their lips when you spoke what was safe. They smiled. Little by little, you learned to choose silence because silence did not offend anyone. But silence also kills the voice I have planted within you. People do not know what you were made to carry, so they want to use you to fill what they lack. They are not the source. So, when you ask them for water, they give you only enough drops to keep you orbiting around them. I do not want your heart to live like a beggar who goes from bowl to bowl in a barren land. I want you to live as one who knows that the spring lies within my arms. No one can grant you what I have already ordained. No one can accept you long enough to become your foundation. To be cheered by the crowd is fleeting. To be known by me is eternal. When you stop searching for the gaze of people, you will begin to see yourself more clearly. You will realize you do not need to shrink just to fit inside someone's small heart. You will see that you do not need to play the pleasant one simply to remain in their space. You will understand that loneliness is not always an enemy. It is the pause I use to reset the compass within you. Some will leave when you no longer stand in the place that keeps them comfortable, and you will think that is loss. But in truth, it is necessary purification. Souls that do not yet know how to love cannot be the guardians of your heart. I do not require you to be applauded. I only want you to stand where I have placed you. When you stand there, you no longer need to battle for acceptance because the light within you will draw to you. In its appointed season, the souls who are meant to come. What wounds you is not that people leave, but that you once forgot that I remained. The breaking of a relationship touches only the surface layer, but forgetting me touches the foundations. When you entrusted your soul to human love and called it your shelter, you unknowingly pushed me behind the door, simply because I was not as loud as the glittering promises before your eyes. People come and go according to the orbit of their own selfishness, but what makes your heart bleed is that you believe they could carry a heart that only I can hold. I have never taken your peace from you. You placed it in the hands of those who did not know how to keep it. The wound did not come from their leaving, but from the moment you convinced yourself they were a place you could dwell. When the truth is revealed, the pain is not truly the loss of the other, but a new sight of yourself you realize you abandoned the source of life, and then called the desert the place where you belonged. There is a story you have heard, but look at it in a new light when Mary and Martha were busy with hospitality. Martha rushed about, serving, preoccupied with everything that needed to be done, while Mary simply sat at the feet of Jesus, quietly listening. Martha said, "Lord, do you not care?" as if he had been unfair. But his answer did not revolve around service or busyness. It revolved around something deeper. Mary has chosen the better part. You often think you hurt because others did not tend to you properly, because they did not return your love, because their words were sharp, because their silence was too long. But deeper than that, it is because you chose what was left instead of the better part. You chose human approval instead of closeness with me. You laid your heart at the feet of souls who did not yet have the peace to listen. Instead of sitting at my feet, where you do not need to perform, do not need to strain, do not need to beg for the right to exist. Every relationship in your life is a mirror of how you treat yourself. When you place others in my seat, every word they speak carries a weight far beyond its real substance. A mild rebuke becomes a verdict. A cold gesture becomes a proclamation that you are not enough. You say you hurt because they turned away, but your soul had already turned first away from me the moment you hung your value on their words. People will always change, and they have the right to change. But you must not build your life upon what is unstable and then hope it will stand. I want you to understand this. A heart rooted in me cannot be broken by the silence of people. Only a heart rooted in people shatters when silence arrives. It is not they who break you. It is that you tried to build a bridge from rotten wood, and when the wind rose, the bridge fell according to its nature. You once believed that I abandoned you, that I stood still and watched you suffer without intervening. But many times, I knocked softly on the door of your heart, not with threats, but with quiet peace. You heard it, but you did not trust that voice because it did not push you, did not rush you, did not intoxicate you like human emotion does. You chose fervent promises over enduring love. You chased the eyes that know how to flatter over my gaze that knows you even in the dark. The pain you carry is not the failure of love, but your refusal of the better part I had already prepared. When you return, you will discover that your tears are not there to accuse you, but to wash away the clinging from your soul. No one can steal what I give. Only you can place it in the hands of those who do not know how to keep it. When you remember that I remain, pain no longer takes the shape of loss. The departure of people becomes only a wind passing across the roof, not a storm tearing up the foundation. You no longer ask, why did they change? But instead, whom did I forget? In my panic, I do not bind you with fear, nor hold you by threats. I am there in presence, in breath, in the gentle silence of a love that does not need spectacle to endure across the years. When you place your heart back into my hands, not everyone will stay, but those who are meant to will never drain you dry. And even if that person leaves, you will still stand, because I am not going anywhere. Pain does not come to condemn. It comes to reveal the parts of your heart that have not yet been placed in me. Each wound is a discreet mirror reflecting the region of your soul that still leans on people instead of resting in the eternal source. When the heart collides with fragile promises, the tear that appears does not arise to humiliate you, but to expose a flawed construction. You built your trust on sand instead of rock. People can hurt you, but I am the one who uses that pain as a compass needle, pointing to the place where you still resist me through self-reliance. Just as a clay vessel cracks where the fire never reached, the heart splits precisely where it has not yet passed through. My kiln, that is not failure. It is the place in need of firing again. The crack does not accuse the one who formed the vessel. It only says that the fire must come once more to perfect your shape. There are fragments of pain that make you react violently, not because the emotion is too large, but because the soul is trying desperately to defend itself. You think you are being attacked with hostility, when in truth, the heart is merely trembling beneath a revelation. You have not yet surrendered that part to me. The words someone speaks may feel sharp, but they only touch the protective layers you wrapped around yourself. When you lean on people to feel safe, you place them in my seat. And when they stumble under the weight of their own weakness, your heart falls with them. I do not lock the door of your heart. I simply turn the mirror so you can see that the soul cannot stand upon ground built from the expectations of others. No one is perfect enough to carry you for a lifetime. No one is resilient enough to bear the full weight of your soul. When you hurt, I do not say, "You deserve this." I say, "This is where we need to heal." In Scripture, my word has spoken, my power is made perfect in weakness. 2 Corinthians 1:2-9. That verse was not given to shame you for your fragility. It is a simple explanation. Only when you no longer have anywhere to lean on your own strength or the affection of others will you be still enough to realize that my power is not a bandage for the surface, but a restoration from within. I do not wipe your tears to tell you it's fine. I wipe them so you may see through them, discovering what proud eyes can never behold. Weakness is not an obstacle. It is the gateway through which my presence enters. The places where you have been brought low are also the places where I am willing to lay new stones, not so you become untouchable, but so you no longer have to beg people to keep you standing. There are people you once begged to stay, not because they were good, but because you feared looking at the hollow within. You clung to them like someone leaning against a cracked wall, believing that if you pressed hard enough, the wall would hold. But the wall only broke further, not because you were wrong, but because you asked it to do what was beyond its nature. People can walk beside you, but no one is the rock. People may comfort for a season, but no one is the comforter eternal. Pain is only a gentle tap to remind you that there are places where you placed too much trust in hands that were never capable of lifting you. When you look back, it is not to accuse yourself, but to see the map where you gave your soul to emotion. You shattered where you placed your heart in me. You stood. Healing does not begin by finding the right replacement person, but by placing every fragment of your heart in the right place within me. I do not ask you to be strong immediately. I only want you to be honest about where cracks still remain. A fracture is not ugly. It is evidence that the soul is unfinished and that I am still forming it. There are moments when you want to hide every wound, afraid of being seen, but I do not heal by covering. I heal by illuminating from within. Light does not make the crack disappear. It turns the crack into a narrow window through which new life begins. I do not call you to forget your past, but to understand it where something broke. There it must be fired again. Where something is weak, there my strength finds its footing. Below is Part 3, Block 1, written according to your preset. My voice is father-child, warm, deep, not self-help, not lecturing. Each idea flows into the next like a spiritual current. No warrior motif, no repetitive structures, no repeated imagery. Metaphors are selective, leaning toward peace, refinement, light, identity, and God. I do not label blocks or add headings in the body. I present continuous prose. 5 paragraphs, 8-12 sentences each. My child, your worth is not born from the eyes of others, nor does it grow through their applause. Your worth begins in me. From the moment I knew you before you knew yourself, from the moment I placed the first breath into your lungs and called your name in the silence of eternity. You have grown used to seeking proof that you are enough in the way people respond to you, a compliment, an acceptance, a gentle look without judgment. But those things are only reflections on water, beautiful under sunlight. cold when clouds pass overhead. The more you strive to satisfy people, the thinner your heart becomes, like a sheet of paper waiting for someone else to write upon it. I did not create you to be a page for the world to inscribe. I created you to carry the story I write. You have been led astray from that identity, believing that being loved is the prize of the perfect. But my child, identity is not a reward. It is the beginning. Small souls often confuse the feeling of being liked with the truth of belonging. People may like you today and turn away tomorrow. That is the nature of imperfect hearts. They love you when you soothe them, then change their tone when you remind them of what they would rather avoid. And you, in the fear of abandonment, try to bend yourself into the shape they prefer. You trim edges, hide imperfections, trading honesty to retain a place that was never truly yours. But my child, human acceptance is wind, no matter how tightly you hold it. It slips through your fingers. I want you to stand in the light of the identity I give, where you do not need to strive to become worthy, because your very existence is the affirmation that I chose you. When you stand beneath my gaze, you no longer need permission to be yourself. Look at the fields where the grain ripens in its season. They do not require passers-by to admire them to know they are growing. They only need the sun and the rain at the right time. So it is with your soul. It does not grow through applause, but through roots sinking deep into the life I provide. There were times when you tried to become a potted flower, easy to display and easy to admire. Yet your roots were those of a tree meant for open sky, needing wind, needing rain, needing refining to become strong. The criticism, the turning away, the misunderstandings of others are not sentences. They are seasons of wind that drive your roots deeper. If you remain in the planter of human expectation, you will grow only to the limit they allow. But if you place yourself in me, you will grow to the measure. I decree no one can calculate it. Identity from me does not bloom in the places where the world silences you. It blooms in the ground where I say, you belong to me. Do not mistake my words as a command to shut yourself off from everyone. I do not ask you to live in isolation, but I want you to know where the source is. You may love, you may give, you may serve, but remember that love is not currency with which you buy your worth. If you let people determine your value, you will live like a traded commodity. Today, they need you, so they cherish you. Tomorrow, they do not, so they forget. But I never hand you over to such scales. I want you to understand that your calling does not come from fulfilling expectations, but from hearing my voice speak your name in the quiet, when no one sees. In that moment, you will know something no one can steal. You are not the copy of someone's desire. You are the being I placed into the world to live, not merely to prove something. My child, the day you stand in the identity I give is the day you step out of the cycle of loved, afraid of being disliked, that governs the world. You will no longer seek safety in universal approval, because you know your peace does not lie in their hands. You will learn to hear criticism without letting it scratch your soul. You will learn to receive a compliment without turning it into your throne. I do not want you to become hardened. I want you to become free. Free from requiring every gaze to be gentle. Free from needing every heart to understand you. Free from shrinking yourself into a more convenient version simply to blend into the crowd. For my child, standing within, my gaze also means you can stand alone when you must and remain whole. When you stand in the identity I give, the pain of losing someone will no longer be collapse, but clarity. Disappointment does not arise from the world turning its back on you, but from the moment you give them the authority to decide who you are. When you allow their gaze to become your mirror, your soul will see only the cracks they wish to see. They may call your gentleness weakness, your honesty unpleasant, your faithfulness naive, Each of these labels clings to the mind like dust settling on a mirror, making you believe the distorted reflection is your true portrait. You begin to adjust yourself according to their words, speak less, express less, love more cautiously, simply to be considered enough. In that moment, disappointment is no longer a fleeting sensation, but a cycle. The more you try to please, the more you lose yourself. I did not fashion your soul to be stamped by human hands, for those hands tremble under their own fear, ambition, and deprivation. There are people who appear in your life like carnival mirrors, stretching every feature out of shape. They praise you when you comply, criticize you when you speak truth, applaud you when you serve them, and fall silent when you grow weary. You call that feeling injustice, but in reality it only reflects a deeper nature. Souls that have not learned to love themselves cannot love you rightly. Disappointment takes root not because they leave, but because you gave them a burden of judgment that only I am able to bear. When trust is placed in the wrong hands, every outcome becomes a wound. Even if you loved with pure intentions, I have seen you ask yourself many times, why can't they see my worth? Yet the real question is, why did you let them be the first to see it? You do not belong to eyes that shift with the weather of human hearts. You belong to the one gaze that never changes. Disappointment is like an anchor, tying you to the wrong harbor. The more you struggle, the tighter it binds. You believe that if you try just a little harder, endure more, sacrifice more, remain silent more one day, they will finally understand you. But that promise is only an illusion born from lonely hope. People do not betray your worth, they simply reveal the limits of their love. Your worth has never fallen to the ground. It was merely placed in the hands of someone who did not know how to cherish it. I never intended for you to shatter, but I allowed certain pieces to slip from your grasp so you would see that those hands were never strong enough to hold them. When you fall into disappointment, you are not losing. You are simply seeing clearly the price of granting the power of definition to hearts that have not yet been healed. Sometimes you believe disappointment is proof that you are not good enough. But disappointment is merely a curtain that opens to reveal a truth. Your soul has forgotten the place where it began. You came into this world with the breath I placed in your chest, not to become a shadow in someone else's story. I do not need you to prove yourself in order for me to love you. The promises you hear from people are thin outlines, while the word I place over you is solid ground. When you stand upon that ground, criticism is only wind. Praise is only rain. Neither can uproot you. I do not want you to become hardened. I want you to become steadfast. Steadfast because you know the source, not because you know how to endure. Steadfast because your eyes are fixed on me, not because you reject all others. Those who take away your peace are not the only ones at fault. The vulnerability lies in where you handed the key. I do not blame you for loving, because love is the natural response of a soul when it encounters warmth. But I remind you that love is not the same as surrendering authority. You may open your heart, but that heart must have a foundation. You may trust, but that trust must have a pillar. I did not create you so that your soul would bend every time someone changes their tone, expression, or season of affection. I created you to walk through this world not with fear of change, but with the quiet of one who knows where they belong. And when you begin to relearn this truth, disappointment ceases to be a wound and becomes a teacher. A wounded heart is not evidence that you have failed, but a gentle reminder that you are stepping away from places no longer fit for the life I have planted in you. Some pains seem meaningless, but they are meaningless only when you try to avoid them like enemies. When you look straight at them, you will see they resemble threads in a needle, painful, yet aimed at restoration, not destruction. Every broken relationship, every broken promise, every moment you believe you were left behind is not here to turn you into ashes, but to peel away the hardened soil that keeps your seed from growing. I have never let your heart shatter so completely that it could never recover its form. I only allow it to crack just enough for the light to enter. You remind yourself that if you had not loved, you would not hurt, but I tell you, if you had no identity, you would not hurt in the right places. The pain is proof that your soul has grown larger than the molds the world tried to hand you. Wounds do not demand that you rush to bandage them, but that you stop to see which part of your heart has been set upon sand instead of rock. You often try to sever your feelings quickly, as though silence will make everything disappear. But silence is only the lid that covers a smoldering fire. The source of crisis is not the person who caused your pain, but the place within you that once believed they were the source. When the source is misplaced, the water turns bitter. I do not reproach you for placing your trust there, but I want you to see this somewhere within you. You believe that people could give you what only I am strong enough to carry. A kind arm can hold you for a season, but only my wings can keep you forever. The wound simply points to that place, the place where your heart attached its life to a temporary pillar and called it a foundation. Like a clay vessel not yet fully fired, it can hold cold water but will crack when touched by heat, not because the one who pours is cruel, but because the vessel is not yet strong. You have welcomed emotions of greater intensity than your soul could bear when it had not yet taken root in me. Loving without anchoring yourself in the source turns you into a container of heat, rather than a stream nourished by steady waters. The fracture does not proclaim you weak. It only reveals where you must be returned to the furnace. I do not discard the broken vessel. I bring it back to the kiln so it may be born again, able to withstand both heat and pressure. Pain does not erase value. It simply displays how much you need to return to me to complete what remains unfinished. I want you to learn to see your wounds not as sentences of condemnation, but as directions. When you say, "I place my hope in the wrong person," that is not a confession of guilt, but the doorway of awakening. For if you can still see where you misplaced yourself, it means your soul has already turned toward the light. People may break the fragments you placed in their hands, but they cannot touch the part I hold, in the deepest place, where the lies of the world cannot reach. I am still waiting for you to stand, not to prove your strength, but to realize you no longer need to lean on them. When you understand this, your wounds are no longer evidence of defeat, but signs that you have taken one more step away from temporary love and back toward the place you truly belong. My beloved child, do not be afraid when your soul trembles in these first days of learning to trust me again. Trembling is not the failure of faith. It is the way the soil softens before roots sink down deep. You once thought that if you endured long enough, people would finally see your worth, but endurance alone never turns dead ground into fertile soil. I do not want your heart to turn to stone just to avoid being hurt. I want it to grow in discernment, so it will not shatter for nothing. You may remember being overlooked, abandoned, replaced, but remember only so you can recognize this truth. Those places can no longer contain the life I am planting in you. When you learn to read your wounds as a map that leads you back to me, you will understand why I have never called pain a destination. Letting go is not slamming a door in anger, nor is it a declaration of war against the one who hurt you. Letting go is the moment your soul exhales the weight it has been carrying and places that weight into my hands, where it no longer becomes a burden. You used to believe that letting go meant admitting failure, that you were not strong enough to hold on, not persistent enough to fix things, not loving enough to save. But love is not a miracle that forces someone to become what they refuse to be. Love simply reveals where a heart can bloom and where it can only survive by enduring. When you cling to a relationship out of fear of losing it, you turn yourself into an old anchor that drags the ship to the bottom. Letting go is not abandoning a person, it is abandoning the illusion that you can turn them into your source. And in the very moment you admit, "I am enough for you," Your soul stops fighting for what was never meant to belong to it. There are hands that once felt warm, but they were only warm because you kept feeding the flame. Every time you sacrificed, every time you stayed silent, every time you took on responsibility so the other could escape it, that fire flared up not because they carried love, but because you carried heat. Letting go is placing truth back in its proper order. The warmth was not yours to generate. The source was never in them. Life does not flow from your ability to save everyone. I did not create you to be a container for unshaped hunger, nor did I form you to be a refuge for souls who never intend to stand on their own feet. When you hold on to them out of fear of being alone, you are digging a grave for your own peace. Letting go does not deny the memories remain. But they stop ruling your soul when you hand the steering wheel back to me. Letting go is like dropping a stone from your hand, not because the stone is hateful, but because the hand is tired from holding it too long. The stone falls to the ground and returns to where it belongs. The hand is freed to receive what truly fits it. You cannot receive what I have prepared if both your hands are still gripping what has already run dry. I know you tried not because you are weak, but because you believed love could save everything. Yet some souls only recognize love after they have lost what they once possessed. And I do not want you to become the price they must pay to learn that lesson. When you let go, you are not saying enough to them. You are saying enough to the erosion that has been eating away at your heart. And in that word, you are not closing a door. You are returning to the threshold I reserved for you. Letting go does not turn you into someone without feelings. On the contrary, letting go is one of the most compassionate acts you can offer your own soul, because it releases you from endlessly excusing the harm others cause. You kept telling yourself, they don't mean it. They will change. They just don't understand. And with every self-justification, you were pushing the blade deeper into your own flesh. Letting go is when you stop stabbing yourself and begin to let me bandage you. You are not a container for the storms of other people's emotions. I never wanted you to learn endurance like an animal that suffers in silence. I want you to learn how to stand in peace. Peace is not the place where the wind is silent. It is where your heart knows that even when the wind shifts, it still stands upon the rock. Letting go is that first step onto the rock. Do not fear the hollow feeling when you release your grip. That emptiness is only the temporary space left by roots pulled out of barren ground. I will not leave your roots exposed. I am transplanting them to a place of water and light. In the early days, you will feel strange, as though you have walked away from something that still could have been salvaged. But your soul is not nourished by maybe, it is nourished by the truth that I am enough for you. When you loosen your hold on human hands, you are not falling into nothing, you are falling into my arms. And there, pain stops being a weight and becomes a reminder that your worth was never contained in who held you, but in the one who has never let you go. Memories do not vanish when you lay down your pain. They only stop speaking like a tyrant and become quiet like a mirror I have cleaned. When you look at them in the dark, memories become stones, blocking your path, making your heart replay the same scene of breaking as if destiny were already written. But when you bring those memories before me, what was once a wound becomes a map marking where you turned the wrong way and how I pulled you back. You do not need to erase what happened. The attempt to erase only forces you to fight your own soul. I do not ask you to forget, I teach you to look again with the light I have placed within you. That light does not deny what occurred, but it refuses to let the weight of the past define your worth in the present. When your memories are laid under my light, they are no longer a cage, but a window opening onto a new sky. Some people stepped into your life like a rainy season and then left, leaving marks that do not easily fade. You tried to scrub away every trace of where they touched you, as though forgetting would make your soul cleaner. But memory is not a stain of ink. It is more like a river that once flowed through you, carrying both silt and debris. Under my light, you begin to sort. The silt is kept to nourish growth. The rubbish is carried away without needing hatred. Do not fear the moments when you are reminded. Memory does not tear at your soul when it rests in my hand. You will learn to see both the wound and the protection in every event. It was precisely their abandonment that closed a door leading to the abyss, and precisely their betrayal that pulled your heart away from a place unworthy to keep it. When I place my light upon your memories, you will discover this pain was once a fire, but in me it becomes embers. Fire consumes when you hug it in anger. Embers warm you so the night is no longer terrifying. You will remember the moments you were sure you had been forsaken, and then realize I was there in the silence, waiting for you to stop trying to save yourself so that I could save you. When my light touches your memories, what once made you tremble loses its power, because it is no longer hidden in the darkness where imagination can inflate it. I do not ask you to pretend to be strong. I am teaching you to stand in truth. And the truth is this: nothing you have gone through has escaped my sight. No pain has slipped out of my hand, and no memory is big enough to defeat my light. Letting go of pain is not the denial of what was once felt. You do not need to erase every tremor in order to prove you have matured. I do not build the soul through erasure. I build it through refinement. A wound that has never been placed under the light will grow into the root of bitterness, but when you bring it before me, it becomes soft soil upon which I plant peace. Many try to suppress the past like a hand forcing down the lid of a boiling pot, and the steam burns their palms. I tell you to lift the lid, not so that the pain may flood out, but so that the steam may escape safely. When you allow me to be present in your memories, you no longer see them through wounded eyes, but through the gaze of a soul in recovery. On this journey, you will find that the past will knock at your door from time to time. It does not return to drag you away, but to ask where you now stand. If you open the door in fear, it will lead you back into the old labyrinth, but if you open it through the light you have in me, it becomes a witness that you have grown beyond what once broke you. I do not erase memory, I transform it into testimony, and a bearer of testimony no longer fears darkness, for they know light is not something to be found in mankind, but something given by me, the only one who sees the fullness of your soul from beginning to end. When you lay your heart upon my shoulder, people assume you have shut down your emotions, as if trusting me means sealing away every possibility of love. But stability is not a cold wall raised to defend against harm. Stability is the house I build within your soul, where winds still blow but cannot tear out the foundation. Pain may come, memories may surge, your kindness may be exploited, but each wave can only strike the rock I have laid beneath you. It cannot sweep you away. You do not need to lose your gentleness in order to keep your peace. Gentleness protected by me does not become weakness. It becomes endurance. When you choose me as your anchor, you do not extinguish your ability to love. You learn to love without losing yourself. Not because your heart suddenly becomes steel, but because every emotion has a place to pour itself, not into the temporary arms of people, but into my chest, where you are not judged. Stability is not silence before pain. It is the ability to stand in pain because you know you are being held. There are relationships that make you believe love requires sacrificing the safety of your soul, that if you do not compromise, you will lose the one who holds your heart. But when you make me your foundation, you begin to see that such blind love is only a fragile bridge leading to an abyss. I do not teach you to close your heart. I teach you to place it in the right position. People want you to hand over your entire self as if it were property they have the right to command. I want you to entrust your heart to me so that I may restore it. And from there, you will learn how to give love with boundaries. Stability does not come from winning every argument. It comes from knowing you do not need to argue in order to prove your worth. You no longer seek compliments to feel enough. You begin to live as one who has already been affirmed from within. My heart. A stable heart does not extinguish emotion. It knows when to open, when to step back, and when to draw a circle around its peace to protect it. The world may mistake that stability for coldness. Those accustomed to chaos may see your silence as a lack of care. But one who lives in me no longer reacts to the turbulence outside. They respond with the rhythm of the peace I have placed inside. You still feel the tremor of longing, the quiver of hope, and the bitter pulse of disappointment. But emotion no longer holds the steering wheel of your soul. You do not freeze. You simply stop allowing the wind to shape your form. I teach you a gentle kind of stability. You may love someone, but you do not need to die in their hands. You may have compassion for a soul, but you are not required to carry their entire life on your back. The heart I give is not a heart of wood. It feels. It grieves. It hopes. But it does not melt in hands that do not know how to hold. You once thought stability meant the absence of pain, but in truth, stability is the ability to walk even while pain remains. It does not deny that you may be betrayed, misunderstood, abandoned. It simply declares that you are no longer undone by these things. What can break a soul that rests in my arms? Not rejection, not silence, not the unfaithfulness of men. People may retract the affection they once promised, but they cannot retract the identity I placed within you. They may walk out of your story, but they cannot step into the place where I walk with you. This is the foundation of stability. You stand not because you are strong, but because you stand upon the one who never falls. Stability does not strip you of compassion. It protects compassion from becoming chains. A heart without an anchor loves like an unmoored boat, one gust, and it crashes against the rocks. But the heart anchored in me knows how to love with clarity, to love without abandoning self, to love without surrendering identity, to love without expecting another human to become the savior. You do not need to endure everything in order to be called good. You need to let me define what good is. When I am your anchor, you do not need to strain to become immovable. You simply remain in me, and that stillness is enough to withstand every wave. There are souls who believe that given enough time, pain will simply evaporate like morning mist before the sun. But time only fades memory. It does not touch the wounds buried deeper than emotion. The pain of betrayal does not disappear by counting days. It sinks like dust upon a cut that was never stitched. You may learn to ignore it. You may keep yourself busy to outrun it. But when night falls and no voices remain, you hear it call from the hollow in your chest. These are the dry fields within the soul, where the light of reason cannot reach, where you need me, like the first rain of the season softens the earth, where what contracted in agony may bloom once more. As Psalm 147:3 whispers, I heal the brokenhearted, not by erasing the past, but by weaving every thread of pain into a melody you never believed you could sing. You once waited for time to do its work, believing that if you walked far enough from the one who shattered your trust, you would become whole again. But distance is not medicine. It is only space between waves of pain, like sunlight that dries the surface of the ground but does not mend its inner cracks. You have stood under new days while still carrying the quiet fracture no one sees. I do not call you into the future while your wounds remain unhealed. I want you to place each one into my hands so that I may tend the places where time is powerless. When I touch your pain, I do not rush. I do not tear the wound from you. I sit beside you, steadying your heartbeat with my presence, teaching you that healing is not forgetting, but remembering correctly, remembering that you survived, not that you were ruined. There are wounds that deepen the longer time passes, because they were never spoken, never acknowledged, never placed in me. You have told yourself, it will be fine. But that was a promise placed on your own shoulders, not a guarantee you received from me. I do not heal with denial, I heal with gentle recognition. I step into that barren land like the first light rain of the season. Not violent, not storm-like. I soften the hardened soil so that the roots of hope can descend, so that the seeds of peace may find footing in what was once desert. I do not ask you to be stronger. I only ask whether you are willing to let me lay my hand upon the weakest place. That weakness does not make you smaller. It is the gateway through which I enter to heal. Healing does not come from trying to forget the one who once hurt you. It comes from no longer allowing them to define your heart. When you place your pain upon my altar, you are not handing your soul over to the past. You are simply acknowledging that you were never created to carry that burden alone. People may crack you, but they do not have the authority to extinguish you. Only when you realize that I am the only place that can hold your heart in its entirety will you stop searching for peace in the hands of those who only know how to take, not how to keep. It is in the moment you exhale and release what has already been lost that I place into your hands a kind of peace that does not depend on memories or on expectations from others. It is not time that lifts you to your feet. It is I who have raised you up every time you were certain you could not take another step. I do not heal you by making bright promises that you will never hurt again. I heal you by staying with you in every beat of pain, by turning what once made you collapse into fertile ground for growth. Just as the rain does not ask the earth why it has cracked, I do not interrogate you about why you have broken. I simply soften what is hardened so that life can find its way back. And when you have tasted that peace, you will know that true restoration is not when the memory disappears, but when the memory loses its power to control you. You will no longer be afraid to look back, because in that gaze you will not see someone abandoned, but see that I quietly walked beside you through every day you thought you were alone. You once tried to find an explanation for your pain, as if only when you understood why that person hurt you would you finally be allowed to heal. But understanding is not ointment for the soul. Understanding is only the key that opens the door of the mind. The wound does not sit only on the surface of your thoughts. It lies deep in the layers where you once trusted, hoped, and entrusted yourself. A wounded soul does not demand a perfect answer. It demands a place where it can be held, where it can be laid down, where it can stop holding everything up on its own. I do not ask you to explain every cause, every motive, every crack you have passed through. I simply invite you to return. Healing does not come when you fit all the pieces of your memories into a coherent picture. Healing comes when you place that picture in my hands and let me decide which parts must remain and which parts can dissolve. There are questions you have wrestled with for years. Why did they leave me? Why did that promise collapse? Why was my sincerity treated as something so small? You thought that if you could just know the reason, the pain would finally stop. But you have discovered that even when the answers arrive, they do not make the fractures in your heart any less real. You hurt not because you lacked information, but because your heart once placed its full trust in a place that could never keep it. Just as a fragile clay jar does not need to know why boiling water makes it crack, it only needs to be placed back in the hands of the potter so he can refire the weak place. So it is with you. I am the one who breathed life into you. I know the places that have been overloaded with expectations, with haste, with the innocence of a tender heart. When you return to me, you are not submitting a report, you are opening the door to the very hands that once formed your soul. You think that in order to come to me, you must say the right things, find the right spiritual meaning behind your pain, turn your tangled emotions into tidy words. But I do not heal on the basis of how neat your prayer sounds. I heal on the basis of your presence in my arms, like a mother who holds a crying child without demanding an explanation for every tear. I place who you are above the story you are trying to manage. I do not need you to present a convincing argument. I only need you to come with your trembling, with your confusion, with a handful of half-finished sentences. Healing begins the moment your heart stops trying to bandage itself, and finally allows me to touch the very place you have been trying so hard to hide. When you stand before me, your pain does not fade because you have learned something new. It fades because you are no longer fighting alone. You do not need to understand the full purpose of every trial before I welcome you. Often the understanding of meaning only comes after you have entered into peace, not before. I do not ask you to be skilled in interpretation. I teach you a way of living. Bring everything back to me. When you are exhausted, you imagine you must be strong before you are worthy to pray, but it is precisely in your weakness that I am closest. Weakness does not push you away from me. It is the language I understand most deeply. My hands are not searching for perfect souls. They are searching for souls that are willing to open. Healing, therefore, is not the achievement of intellect, but the grace of surrender. You do not need to know why the knife cut in order for the wound to be stitched. You only need to lie still and let the hand that knows how to heal do its work. I sew together every fiber of you, the hidden layers no one else can see, every shame you have tried to bury so that people will not judge you. You do not need to prove your worth to be healed by me. You only need to admit, I cannot heal myself. That is the moment I step in, gentle yet unwavering, like the night rain softening cracked earth that the sun's heat has long been unable to restore. You once thought healing meant returning to who you were before you were hurt, as though I would simply stitch up the tear and hand you back your old shape. But I do not repair the heart the way a tailor mends torn cloth. I rebuild the heart the way a potter shapes a new vessel from broken shards. When betrayal breaks you, what crumbles is not only emotion, it is the structure of trust inside you that was once placed in the wrong position. I do not collect each shard and glue them back so you can continue living as before. I refire the entire mass of clay. The mended vessel can survive quietly, but the remade vessel can carry what the old one never had the strength to hold. To do this, I do not ask if you are ready for the fire. I ask if you dare to rest in my hands. You have seen this in your own life without realizing it. When a harmful relationship ended, you thought you became weaker, more diminished, somehow worth less. But months later, when a friend came to you asking advice about their situation, a story eerily similar to what you once lived, you suddenly spoke words that your past self could never have heard. You set gentle boundaries that you once were too afraid to draw. You calmly refused unfair demands that, in the past, you would have accepted just to keep the peace. You did not see it. This is not you going back to how you were. This is you living with new material inside. Pain did not make you weaker. It taught you how to stand. I do not return you to your pre-wounded version of yourself. I give you a new identity, forged in light. Sometimes you feel colder than before, less trusting of people, less quick to open your heart. And you think I have taken away your purity. But you are mistaken. I do not remove your purity. I remove the kind of naivety that allowed you to be exploited. I do not extinguish compassion. I strip away the carelessness that let others drain you dry. Like someone who has worn borrowed shoes, learning at last to choose the right size. You no longer force your heart into shapes of love that only leave you blistered. You know how to stop when someone's sweet words do not bring peace. You know how to walk away when a hand reaches out but cannot hold your soul. These things do not mean you have become hard. They mean you have learned your worth. A heart whose material I have changed is no longer thin fabric that tears easily. It is thread woven from light, soft and gentle, yet strong enough to endure. I have seen you blame yourself. If only I had been stronger. If only I had seen it sooner. But you do not need to be stronger on the first day. You only need not to give up on the second. The forgiveness I teach you is not returning to the place that shattered you. Forgiveness is removing the anchor lodged in your memories so you may move forward. You do not need to become someone who endures better. You need to become someone who knows how to protect what I have entrusted to you. I place gentleness within you, not so that people may exploit it, I placed it so you would know how to heal other souls without losing yourself. A heart that has had its material changed no longer fears pain, because it has learned that pain is not the ending, it is the doorway into growth. And when I change the material of your heart, I do not make it numb. I make it able to carry weight. You will look back at those who once brought you to your knees, and you will no longer tremble at the sound of their names. Not because the memory has disappeared, but because the memory has lost its power over you. You will look at the morning sky and no longer associate it with the days of despair, not because those days never happened, but because now you read them in the light. I have formed within you a new kind of strength. You no longer avoid the wind. You stand steady within it. This is not the magic of time, it is my work in you when you allow me to touch the deepest places. There was a time when you believed that pleasing others proved you had a good heart, that your tolerance was evidence you knew how to love. You accepted exhausting demands, demanding glances, expectations that were never yours, as though making others feel comfortable was a responsibility assigned to your soul. But a soul is not born to answer every voice from the world. It is born to hear mine. When you begin to close doors that once opened too wide, you think you have grown cold. But in truth, you are only preserving the warmth within, like a winter room that shuts its doors not to resist the wind, but to protect the heat already nurtured. You do not close your heart out of hatred, you close it because that heart is where I dwell, not a space for others to enter at will. Some will say you have changed, that you are no longer as easy to approach as before, that you have become difficult, but such words only come from souls who were accustomed to taking from you without ever giving back. When they no longer benefit, they call your awakening selfishness. Yet selfishness is when you keep what belongs to others. Safeguarding your soul is when you protect what I have placed within you. You were not born to be a tool that makes others feel comfortable. You were born to be a sanctuary where I abide, like the doorstep that must be cleared of mud before welcoming a guest. You are not obligated to open your door when the feet before you are still covered in filth, not because you are arrogant, but because you honor the holiness that has been entrusted to you. Your past once made you believe that refusing to satisfy others was a kind of wrongdoing. You felt guilty when setting boundaries, when saying no, when walking away from relationships that drained your peace. But that guilt did not come from me. It came from the hands that wanted to hold your heart without ever taking responsibility for its safety. I never called you to be a vessel for the desires of others. I called you to be a vessel of the light I placed within you. Each time you allow others to define your value, you step out of that place, and your heart begins to dry out. When you stop trying to please them, you are returning your soul to its rightful position where I hold it, not where the world claims it. The holiness I place in you is not a white garment for you to fear getting dirty. It is the breath I have given, so you may know where the soul is safe. I do not ask you to seal your heart. I only call you to know how to open it in the right places. Some souls come to tend the flame, and some arrive only to drain it. Discernment is not harshness. Discernment is love with a boundary. Each time you return to me in uncertainty, you position your window toward the light. And when I say to you, close, it is not a punishment, it is a doorway into life. For not every storm is worthy of your heart standing in its center. You will recognize this when peace begins to return, not peace that bursts like fireworks, but peace like steady breathing after a difficult journey. When you stop trying to please people, you will have space to hear my voice. When you no longer chase their expectations, you will finally be still enough to realize I never placed that burden on your shoulders. You are not uncaring. You are learning to honor what I have sanctified. And when you stand in that holiness, you will see your gentleness has not vanished. It has simply ceased to be exploited. There are seasons when you believe you must love everyone to the same degree, as though unlimited openness proves kindness. You believe that if you set boundaries, If you choose where to invest your emotions, you will be judged as cold, selfish, or lacking faith. But true love is not born from abandoning yourself. It is born from wisdom that knows where the heart can be protected. I never called you to hand your soul to those who cannot keep it. I only teach you to see the difference between the souls who arrive to lift you and the ones who come to claim you. A gardener does not choose good soil because he despises dry ground. He chooses it because life needs the right environment to take root. So it is with your heart. It does not grow by sacrificing itself to toxicity. It grows when placed where light and peace can receive it. There are people who draw near to you with gentle speech and gestures that appear kind. Yet when you place your heart into their hands, you slowly discover they only seek shelter within you, not to shelter with you and me. They do not wish to build. They wish to exploit the softest parts of you to satisfy themselves. You once held them like a wilting plant, believing that pouring more water would cause it to bloom. But you did not realize there is soil that only consumes and never returns. When love becomes exhaustion, it is no longer love, it is dependency. I know my sheep, and my sheep know me. John 1:0-14. Those who do not know me will always demand your heart bend to their desire, but those who belong to me will honor the value in you, because they see my imprint upon you. You ask me, why do I feel guilty when I leave those who only hurt me? Because your heart learned to love before it learned to discern. You were born with a longing to walk beside, to support, to heal. But compassion is not a rope for others to drag you downward. When you allow emotion to lead your decisions, you place your heart in the mud and call it sacrifice. No, sacrifice is not allowing others to trample you. Sacrifice is choosing me over what harms you, even when that harm wears the face you once trusted. I never taught you to love by losing yourself. I taught you to love by seeing me in every soul, and knowing when someone is pulling you away from the calling I have given. When you learn to choose where your heart is placed, it is not an act of denying others, it is an act of honoring the intention of creation. Just as a gardener chooses warm soil, trusting the sun will arrive in its season, and the rain will soak just enough, you have the right to choose relationships in which your soul is not swallowed. You are permitted to leave places that shrink you, even if they call you ungrateful. You are permitted to close the doors you once opened too wide, even if they claim you have changed. You do not need to apologize for protecting what I have consecrated. For your heart is not a marketplace where anyone may touch as they please. Your heart is a temple, and only souls who know how to fear me will know how to enter with reverence. And if you fear that such choosing will make you lonely, remember that loneliness in me is still a hand holding you. Loneliness is not punishment. It is the soil I use to deepen your roots. I never bind your heart with fear. I lead you with light. I do not steer you by threats of loss. I invite you with the promise of peace. When you choose to place your heart in me, you are not turning your back on the world. You are simply walking toward the true source. And from that source, you will know who may step into your life without dimming the light I have kindled. There are souls who think kindness is like an endless well anyone may draw. Anyone thirsty has a right. Anyone who demands must be answered. You grew up believing this, and for a long time you thought that gentleness was a requirement to prove that you were not selfish. You opened your heart to whoever approached. You gave, even when your soul was exhausted, and you blamed yourself when you could not meet their expectations. But kindness is not a public bench in a square where anyone may sit. It is a jewel I have given you, and a jewel is never left on a veranda to be blurred by storm and dust. You are not called to squander what is precious. You are called to steward what is sacred. People may see your kindness as naivete, but I see it as spiritual inheritance, a portion of the nature I placed in you, not something anyone may touch at their whim. You once confused kindness with endurance. When someone came asking for help, you did not dare to say no. afraid you would become selfish. When someone came to unload their loneliness, you offered your soul as a refuge. Even when their storm knocked down everything inside you, you believed that was love. But in truth, you were delivering what I entrusted to you into the hands of those who did not cherish it. Kindness is not loose change thrown into anyone's palm. Kindness is like a seed. It needs soil that can hold water, not soil that only absorbs until it dries to dust. When you give kindness where it is not received, you are not sowing, you are being drained. I do not teach you to reject compassion. I teach you to discern who comes to receive light and who comes to extinguish it. Watch closely. Some arrive gently, grateful for every lift. And when they leave, your soul is at peace. But others come with urgency, with hunger to take without giving. And when they pass through, you feel depleted like soil after drought. I never called you to be a well for souls who only know how to draw. I called you to be a river with a source, with a current, with banks. A river does not change its course just to please someone. It flows along the path I have carved, and only the souls who bow low may bathe in its waters. Remember, this love is not giving without condition in the way the world teaches. Love does not make you disappear so others can breathe more easily. The love I teach you is to preserve yourself so you may give without losing your essence. When I give you kindness, I do not say, give it to everyone. I say, give it to those who know how to receive with humility. There are people you cannot save not because you lack love, but because they do not wish to be lifted in the way I guide. They do not come to be healed. They come seeking a place to collapse with them. I do not require you to follow them into their abyss. I lead you to stand on the bright shore, so that if they want to step upward, you may take their hand, but if they try to pull you down, you have the right to let go. And when you understand this, your kindness will not wither, it will be renewed. You will give not out of fear of being disliked, but because you know it is a stewardship. You will know how to stop, not because you lack love, but because you know true love does not destroy the soul that offers it. You will recognize that the smallness I teach you is not weakness, it is gentleness with roots. A heart that knows whom to love is not a closed heart. It is a heart I have trained to love as I do, wide in compassion, but firm in its boundaries. My beloved child, there is a peace that does not come from the presence of another person, but from the certainty that you belong to me. When your heart has not yet understood this, every time someone turns their back, you feel as though you are being scraped out of the world. You ask, what is wrong with me? And you begin reshaping yourself to match the silhouette of the one who has just walked away. But my love does not move according to the rhythm of abandonment. It is not like locking the door of a house once the guests have left. It is like breath, still in your lungs, even when you sleep. You were never created to count the footsteps that have departed. You were created to hear my voice, the voice that keeps your heart standing, even when the whole world falls silent. A soul that knows it is loved does not chase after scattered promises. It remains in my gaze. And that gaze alone is enough to carry you forward. You once believed your stability was anchored in the feeling of being needed. Every time people pulled you into their stories, you mistook it for proof of your importance. But hands that reach for you are not always signs of love. Sometimes they are the grasp of emptiness, searching for something to cling to. When those hands loosened, you were swallowed by fear. Am I not enough? I want you to see more deeply. The soul was never made to be the support beam of every misplaced expectation. You are not a chair in the center of a room for anyone to sit on. You are a structure I designed with foundation, with roof, with doors. Not everyone has the key, and their leaving is not proof that you lack worth. People walk away because of the roads they choose, not because you are unworthy. I remain because my love for you is not a variable. Whoever leaves is simply walking away from what does not belong to them. I want you to look at the way the sun rises. Light does not wait for others to wake before it shines. It appears at its appointed hour. And whoever opens their window receives its warmth. My love is the same. It does not need human approval to validate your value. It does not need praise. It does not need an echo of affection. When you know you are loved by me, abandonment becomes like wind across a field. It does not break the grass. It simply makes the blades sway with life. Pain may still visit you, but it will no longer define you. It only reminds you it is time to return to the place where I laid your foundation, a place that no human hand can take from you. Some souls enter your life like spring, bringing warmth and renewal. Others arrive like an unseasonal storm, sudden, drenching, and gone, leaving only cold behind. I do not call you to gather the drops of rain that have already fallen. When someone chooses to leave, you lose nothing that was truly yours. What you lose is only the illusion you built around them. I have watched the nights when you blamed yourself for not being enough, for not being chosen, for not being the one they stayed beside. But true love does not make you an object to possess, nor grind your spirit down just to keep someone close. True love keeps you standing, and it begins with me. Let departure become the doorway I open, not the blade you use to wound yourself. There were hands you held too tightly only because you feared loss. But you lose nothing when what you held was never yours. You simply receive yourself back. When you know you are loved, you do not require someone's presence to prove you are worthy. You only need me, and when I am your foundation, every other relationship becomes accompaniment, not survival. People may come, may leave, may change, but I do not forsake you. My love does not follow seasons. It does not retract when you fail, nor vanish when you tremble. There was a time when you thought your worth was formed by how others saw you, how they praised you, or how they kept you. You waited for feedback to confirm your direction, waited for pleasant eyes to validate your belonging, waited for an outside presence to silence the unrest inside. But worth is not a gift that people give and take away at whim. It is the breath I placed in your soul the moment you entered this world. When you anchor yourself in me, instead of clinging to human hands, you discover a fullness that does not depend on applause, does not wilt under silence, does not deform beneath rejection. You give not to prove yourself, but because within you there flows an unending source. Imagine a vessel connected to a steady spring. It does not look to the jar beside it to measure its water, nor does it panic each time someone draws from it. It knows its source never stops. So it is with you when you root your life in me. You no longer live from scarcity. You do not give to earn affection. You do not help to be loved. You do not smile as a transaction for gentleness. You smile at the right moment, in the middle of crowded hours, not because anyone demands it, but because there is a quiet peace within you that does not depend on conditions. You stop calculating the effectiveness of kindness. Because your kindness is no longer a tactic, it becomes identity. Someone will ask you, why are you kind when others are not? You do not need to explain. Because you do not give to trade. Souls that live by the logic of winning and losing will see you as weak, but kindness born from me does not weaken you. It gives you endurance that criticism cannot break, a steadiness that abandonment cannot steal. The world is confused by your calm, because it is used to seeing relationships through the lens of power. Value must be proven, affirmed, rewarded. But you have stepped beyond that realm. You know you do not need to be chosen to be precious. You do not need to be held to know you matter. You belong to me. And from that place, you no longer stand beneath the judgment of human hearts. Do not mistake living full for doing everything alone. You do not become an island, locked and guarded against every wound. Your heart remains open, still giving, still reaching out when others fall. But your openness is no longer pleading. It is not a hand extended in search of a bond, but a hand that lifts because you already have a foundation. Your kindness is no longer an attempt to make people stay. It is the natural radiance of a soul that knows it is loved. And when you give from fullness, you are not afraid of running dry. You do not demand return. You do not chase validation. You do not run after approval. You simply live like a hidden spring beneath the earth that keeps flowing, even though the soil does not praise it. The world does not easily understand tranquil souls. But you were not born to satisfy the understanding of this world. You were born to walk rightly under my gaze. When you know you are enough in me, you no longer need to prove anything. You lay down the invisible efforts that have exhausted you for so many years, the decorating of your emotions, the half-true, half-forced words, the small attempts made only to earn a sympathetic glance. You no longer live from lack, you live from abundance. And from that abundance, you give without fear of losing. There are times when you look at those who have hurt you as if they were people deliberately sowing pain. You think they act with cold calculation, that betrayal is a chosen intention. But as your heart slowly steps out of the fractured zone, you begin to see that many souls are simply flailing in the dark. A child breaks a glass, not out of malice, but because it has not yet learned how to hold. So it is with people. They carry within themselves empty spaces, untouched wounds, fragments that have never been healed. They love out of their own brokenness, and in that brokenness, they break others. When I open your eyes, I do not do so to excuse them, but so that you may place your wound where healing lives, not into words of accusation, but into me. Some people betray you not because they want to destroy you, but because they only know how to keep what serves them. They act like someone so thirsty they steal the cup from another's hand. They do not see the value of your heart, not because that heart is cheap, but because their eyes have never learned to see by the light. One who walks in the night does not know they are trampling flowers. They see your care as a resource, not realizing it is an invitation to healing. When you understand that, your anger no longer needs to erupt. You do not need hatred to feel that justice has been done. Those who do not know me still live as thin vessels that have never been fired in the kiln. They shatter not because you touch them, but because they have never known their own capacity to bear weight. I do not tell you this so that you will fling your doors open unconditionally to the very hands that once crushed you. I speak so that you may withdraw your heart from a war that does not need to be fought. You do not have to turn yourself into a judge to regain a sense of control. When you can distinguish between error and essence, you will see that retaliation never fills the emptiness in another person's heart. There are souls who have never known me, and so they cannot give what they have never received. Not all are malicious, most are simply not yet mature enough to comprehend the weight of a trusting heart. And maturity does not come by harsh reproach, but by light. That quiet, gentle tone will help you breathe. When you stop calling them enemies, you no longer force yourself to win against them. You step out of the spiral of those who do, those who suffer, those who win, those who lose. You stand on a different foundation, mine. You begin to see that the pain you once received is no longer a curse, but a mirror reflecting the lack that covers the earth. That lack does not belong to you. You have stepped out of it. You do not have to force yourself to forget, nor force yourself to forgive by denying reality. You simply need to step into the place where I am calling you a land of peace, where you can say within yourself, they do not yet know you. And that sentence is not to lift you above them, but to give you a place to set your sorrow down. Forgiveness is not declaring that what they did was right. Forgiveness is removing your hand from their throat and from your own. You give back to them their responsibility, and you keep your own growth. I will deal with what human beings cannot resolve justly. You only need to learn to see them as travelers who do not yet know the way, not as enemies who deserve to be erased. When you come to me with a heart quiet enough, you will see what I see. There is no soul that is entirely dark, only souls that do not yet know where the light is. There was a season in your life when you believed that to be loved. You had to hide the weakest parts of yourself. You folded up memories of abandonment, hid the times you were rejected, wrapped your inner fractures in a calm exterior. You thought that if no one saw where you hurt, no one could hurt you further. But hiding the wound does not make the soul stronger. It only turns pain into a silent, smoldering presence, like rainwater trapped behind an eave until it becomes moss and mold. A wound needs light, not walls. I do not come to expose you before people, but to open a very small crack in the places you have sealed, so that my warmth can slip in. There are wounds that do not bleed outward but spread within, like dry veins of earth, hiding how deep they have split. Many souls have lived like this for years, laughing, working, fulfilling their roles, yet deep inside, carrying an exhaustion that has never been named. When I touch those wounds, what you feel first is not comfort, but a sharp little sting, not because I wish to hurt you more, but because I am loosening the shell that was only ever meant to be temporary protection, like parched soil meeting rain. Those cracks become the very places where life can seep in. My light does not search for openings to punish. My light searches for pathways to heal. When you stop treating secrecy as a survival skill, you step into a spiritual turning point that the world cannot easily explain. You no longer use a false strength to impress, nor silence to keep control. You no longer need to hide so others will think you are fine. You can say, I am tired. You can exhale, I am in pain. And in such gentle words, I begin to do the work that time cannot reach. There are things time can only fade, not repair. I do not erase memory so that you forget. I bring light into memory so it no longer defines you. I do not seal the wound so that you harden. I open it so you may learn to live soft without breaking. As you allow my light to pass through, you will gradually realize that healing is not becoming as if you had never been broken. It is learning to walk with your cracks without fearing they will be seen. I do not love you because you are flawless. I love you because you are real. People often choose what is polished, smooth, and without blemish. I choose what is willing to open. An unbroken vessel does not leak, but it also does not let water flow out. A vessel that once cracked, when fired again, can withstand heat better than before. The wound does not make you lesser. The wound teaches you where you need me. You no longer bow your head in shame over what has happened. You do not need to prove you are stronger than your wounds. You only need to let them become gateways. When another soul touches your life and says, I hurt like this, you will not answer with philosophy. You will answer with presence. You will not use your past pain to indulge in self-pity. You will use it as a bridge to say, I have walked through that place, and I was led out by the light. Your wounds cease to be thorns driving into your heart. They become pathways through which I pour warmth into your soul, and from your soul into the souls of others. There was a long season when you believed you had to do something perfectly right for someone to notice you, that you had to meet every expectation of the world in order to be allowed to stay. You tried as if standing before a mirror, adjusting every tiny detail so that when you stepped outside, the world would smile and say, you are worthy. But worth is not born from the eyes of others. Worth is not a certificate that needs signatures, nor a ticket that requires the correct paperwork. Your worth is what I placed in you from the beginning, and it remains even when no one sees you. No one praises you. No one understands. A seed does not ask anyone to validate it, it simply grows. It does not need an audience to take root, nor applause to reach upward. It only needs light and soil, and I place that light within your soul. There were days when people looked at you and said you were not enough, that you had to be better, prettier, calmer, more agreeable. They handed you a long list of conditions for being acceptable. If you try to chase every one of those conditions, you will exhaust yourself, and in the end, you will lose yourself. You will realize that such effort is not to live, but to survive. What the world calls being loved is often nothing more than submitting to their emotions. But love in me does not demand performance. I do not ask you to become the version someone else desires. I call you to become yourself in my light. When you live from what I placed within you, your worth no longer needs proof. It simply exists. People measure by appearance, by productivity, by usefulness. They draw close when they see something they can use, and withdraw when it no longer serves them. If you let them define you, your heart will become a stage where you perform, not to live, but to be applauded. You will fear slowing down. Fear silence. Fear the days when no one notices you. But in me, you are allowed quiet days, unremarkable days, days when you simply breathe and exist as a human soul. You do not need to lift your chin high to prove strength, nor lower your head to beg affection. You only need to stand where I placed you, where you are defined by truth, not by the crowd's reaction. When you stop striving to prove, you will learn to live deeper. You will begin to see that worth is not loud, not attention-seeking, not displayed on a billboard. It is like a sprout breaking through the soil after a long winter. Few see it, but the heavens know, the earth knows, and time knows. You are the same. Your quiet progress does not need to be carved into walls. I see every step you take, every breath you endure, every tear you wipe away in patience. Your maturity does not come from trying to impress, but from learning to live with me in the most ordinary hours of your life. When you live from that sacred ordinariness, your heart will no longer depend on what others think. In the end, you will understand worth does not need a stage to shine. It only needs soil to take root. No one has to witness the moment a seed germinates to acknowledge it. It still lives. It still grows. And in time, the world will see a strong tree no one knew began in hiddenness. You are the same. You do not live to prove you are valuable. You live because I have already declared you valuable. When you walk from that foundation, rejection or praise will not shake you. You no longer place your heart in someone else's hands to ask them to appraise it. You simply entrust it to me, the one who knew your worth before you knew how to speak your own name. There are days when you look back at your past and ask why I allowed you to go through things you believed no one could endure. You remember the eyes that deceived, the promises that crumbled, the hand that gripped your heart only to drop it like a toy that had lost its value. You still see those moments in memory, like ink that cannot be erased from the page. But as you walk with me, those marks are no longer accusations. They become signs that you are still here, still breathing, still growing. Every wound that has passed through my silence becomes a testimony to one truth: I did not abandon you. I was there, even when the world around you convinced you that you were alone. The pain may not vanish immediately. It does not dissolve in a single night. It does not disappear simply because you try to forget. But when you walk with me, the pain begins to shift its place. It no longer presses upon your back as a weight, but becomes an anchor that keeps you from drifting toward false promises. You do not need to deny the past to step into the future. You only need to let me walk with you. As you move one small step at a time, the memories that once terrified you become stones paving the road, reminding you that you survived what you once believed you could not. That is not proof you are stronger than others. It is proof that I lifted you where no one else could see. There will be people who look at your life and cannot understand why you are still at peace after your losses. They will think you tolerate well, or that you are used to suffering, or that you simply do not care much. But you know the reason is not your ability to endure more than others. The reason is that you are no longer walking alone. When you walk in me, the things that once brought you to your knees become living testimonies, not to retell as tragedies, but as the quiet pulse of a heart once torn apart and stitched together by threads stronger than before. You do not boast about the scars, you simply no longer hide them. For they do not say you failed, they say I was there. People think testimony must be loud, dramatic experiences, dazzling miracles, storms suddenly becoming calm. But the deepest testimony often comes like a breath, slow, warm, peaceful. You do not need to stand before a crowd to recount your betrayals. You only need to continue living. The calmness you carry after everything is the testimony. Every time you choose peace over bitterness, every time you choose release over revenge, every time you choose to build rather than destroy, those are voices louder than stories. Others may not understand why you are gentle. You do not need to explain. They do not need the details. They only need to see the serenity in your eyes, to know that there has been one holding your hand. And in time, you will look back and realize that it was your old pain that helped you hear me more clearly. Not because I wanted you to suffer, but because the places where your heart cracked became openings through which light could enter. The wound that once demanded you answer why quietly transforms into a response. I preserved you. Pain no longer reminds you of betrayal. It becomes a milestone, marking every step I walked with you through the dry seasons. And every next step you take will whisper to your soul, if I did not abandon you in the ruin, I will not abandon you in the rebuilding. One day, you will understand that what you have gone through was not only for you to survive. It was not so you could look back on your past and take pride in having weathered the storm, nor so you could keep your wounds as souvenirs in your heart. The healing I work in you carries a wider purpose. I pull you from the abyss, not only so you can stand, but so you will know how to bend down when another trembling soul is clinging to its edge. I do not make you strong so that you may stand above others looking down. I make you into a steady hand for wandering steps. The cracks I mend within you do not seal, shut like stone doors. They become openings that welcome light, and that light, once calm, will shine upon another life. Not everyone needs sharp advice. Some simply need presence. If you have ever lived with a silence pressing on your chest, you know what it means to not know what to say, not know who to call for help, not know if you have any worth left. Therefore, when you meet a soul writhing beneath such questions, you do not need to prove anything. You only need to be there. I will use the quiet within you to form a safe space where they dare to name the fears they have long hidden. They will find in you a gentleness that demands nothing and a peace that speaks no words. And it is that very stillness that will help them breathe again. You do not need to speak much. The healing you have gone through will speak for you. There are people who come to you not because you have solutions, but because you have walked through the wall they now stand before. A soul betrayed will trust your gaze more than any sermon, because it recognizes that authenticity does not come from knowledge, but from one who has touched the fire. You do not need to prove the extent of your understanding. You only need to be honest about your journey. They will see in the way you walk, not hurried, not frantic, a path they can trust. I do not give you a title. I give you a mark. Every wound that is healed becomes an invisible whisper that there is one who held your hand in the darkness. Do not fear being used to lift others. I do not place upon your shoulders the burden of replacing me. You are not to pull them from the abyss by your own strength. You are not to become their savior. Your role is like a lamp placed near a doorway. You do not create the dawn, but you keep them from stumbling at night. I am the light. You are only the lamp once kindled after days of being extinguished. There will be souls who receive comfort from you and then vanish from your life. That is not wrong. You are a resting place, not a permanent dwelling. I will carry them further, and in that moment, you will learn to release them in peace, not in regret. You do not need to ask, "Why me?" For in the seasons when you thought you were breaking, I planted in you a softness that can uplift without destroying itself. The words you once cried before me have now become shelter for the tears of others. The nights you lay awake wondering if you were strong enough, those very nights forged the steady rhythm that allows you to tell someone softly, "I understand." Not in theory, but in experience. Not to boast that you overcame, but to show that overcoming is real. Healing in me does not end with you. It extends to the souls I place near your life. Like sparks, finding one another in the dark, there will be souls who come to you with weary eyes, trembling steps, and hearts chipped in the same way yours once was. They speak in broken stories, memories with no place to belong, wounds that seem dormant but bleed with a single touch. You will be moved, because you have been there. You know the trembling, the sleepless nights, the questions no one could answer. But remember this, I saved you not so you would bear the weight of every soul, but so you would know how to bring them to me. You are not the boat, you are the signpost. You point to the harbor, you do not sail your body into the waves to carry them across. If you try to shoulder them as a duty, your heart will buckle, not because you are weak, but because you are carrying what only I was meant to bear. Do not confuse compassion with obligation. Some will cling to you as if you are their only son, because the darkness in them burns too fiercely. They see the light in you but do not see the source of your light. They think you are the source, so they try to draw every drop of warmth for themselves. In that moment, your soul will begin to dry, not because you lack love, but because love has been placed on the wrong axis. I do not call you to become an endless spring. I call you to become one who knows the way to the well. And that well is never you. That well is me. You are not designed to be a makeshift savior for those who refuse to look up to the sky where the true source of life waits. There are people who will seek you out to avoid my voice, not to listen to it. They believe that if you listen long enough, you will carry what they refuse to confront. But the peace you carry is not a commodity to bargain with. It is the grace I have placed within you so you may stand firm, not so you may be drained. You have the right to say, "I cannot take the place of God in your life." You have the right to step back when your heart grows heavier than the peace I have given you. You have the right to guard the place where I am healing you before opening the door to anyone else. For an empty vessel waters no garden, and trembling hands cannot lift a falling soul. Not every prayer is an instant rescue, but every honest prayer is an act of placing that person into my hands. When you do not know how to help, remember you once collapsed beneath your own weakness, and I lifted you. Do that for them, not by your own strength, but through trust. You may listen, you may wipe tears, you may point the way, but let me be the one who touches the deepest place of their heart. For there are wounds that do not tear open because of human words, but because a soul has abandoned me for too long. And only when they return can the fragments be gathered by my hands. The healing I place in you is not a master key to open every door. It is the lamp that distinguishes who truly wishes to cross the threshold. You cannot save one who chooses to remain in the fire. You cannot rewrite the canvas of a soul that rejects me just to keep one hand of yours. When you see this, do not rush to blame yourself. Discernment that protects the heart is not selfishness, it is faithfulness to me. For if you lose what I have restored in you to satisfy another, you are not loving, you are returning to the land from which I rescued you. And the soul I preserve has no need to live again in the darkness of men. There will be times when people come to you not to hear the truth, but because they see the peace within you and want to lean on it. They think that you yourself are the beginning, the reason they can breathe calmly amid their ruins. But that peace does not come from your strength. It is the water I poured drop by drop into your heart after every season of darkness. If you forget this, you will carry a burden that is not yours. You will try to become a spring when you are only soil. I did not call you to be the source. I called you to open the ground so that my water may flow. Like a clean conduit that keeps nothing for itself. Your task is not to hold, but to channel. When you hold, you run dry. When you channel, you are filled anew. When a soul comes to you and speaks of wounds they no longer have the strength to touch, you will want to gather every piece of them into your arms, as if you could cover the sky with your own body. But let your heart remember the nights when you thought you were about to break. And I came not through human words, but through silent presence. I did not send someone to replace me. I came myself. Today, I desire to use you as a bridge between hurting souls and my love itself. You are not the healing hand. You are the sign that points to the hand whose power heals. If you turn yourself into the answer, you will unintentionally veil me. But if you point them to me, you will free their soul from depending on you. True love does not pull others toward itself. It leads them back to where they belong. There are souls so frail that they can only lean on you, without enough strength to look up to me. When that happens, do not rush to lift them higher. Simply stand beside them as a milestone on the road so they do not lose direction. You may walk slowly. You may listen. You may pray on their behalf. But remember, every step you walk with them must rely on my strength, not yours. A guide is not the one who climbs the entire mountain for another. A guide simply holds enough light so the one behind does not fall. You can only do this when you are rooted in me. When you are exhausted, the light will dim. When you return to me, the light becomes clear again. That is how you will discern your stopping point, not when the other person finds peace, but when you begin to lose the peace I have given you. Learn to set boundaries not through fear, but through reverence for the calling I have entrusted to you. You cannot lead someone across the desert with compassion alone. You need water from me, just as a caretaker does not water plants with their own sweat, but with rain or well water. You must not use emotion to nourish another soul. Use my presence. Many will mistake love for giving yourself until you are empty. But love in me is knowing when to stop so that help does not become a chain. You offer them hope, but you do not hand them shortcuts. You point them to me so that each soul may learn to stand firm before me, not simply lean upon you. When you see a soul return to me, no longer needing you as their pillar, your heart will feel light. Do not fear that. Their growth is not the loss of connection, but the sign that the water has reached the place it was meant to reach. Like a seed that no longer needs the gardener's hand once it has rooted, the souls you once supported will gradually learn how to walk in my light. I do not want you to keep them beside you to prove your worth. I want you to open the door so they may continue with me. Then you will understand you are not merely the place they run to in their suffering. You are the living witness that the weak can be rescued, the broken can be rebuilt, and the deceived can find truth when they set their hearts upon my foundation. My child, if you have reached this point, it means your heart has once broken, not because you are weak, but because you knew how to love. Souls that do not know how to love never know how to hurt. Souls that only know how to protect themselves never know what it means to give. You hurt because you once opened the door, once trusted, once placed your hope in a place you believed was home. But what I reveal to you today is not counsel to stop loving, but an invitation to learn to love as I love, not to be drained, not to be exploited, not to be turned into a source of water for those who only know how to drink you dry. I do not want you to shrink into stone walls. I want you to become a garden. yet a garden with gates, with fences, with care shaped by my own hand. There are souls who pass through your life, leaving marks like cuts on wood, sharp, cold, and without apology. But wood does not lose its value because it has been cut. It simply waits to be carved into a new form. I do not ask why you allowed them close. I only ask whether you are willing to let me rebuild the places they distorted. They do not enter your life to destroy your destiny. They enter to reveal the parts of you that you have not yet placed in me. Every tear that falls is like raindrops watering the soil, driving the roots of your soul deeper into the life I pour out. Outwardly, people may think you are weak, but inwardly, your roots are beginning to reach depths no storm can touch. You once believed that peace came from holding on to familiar things, even when they strangled your soul. But peace is not the quiet of a prison. Peace is your step out of that prison. Even if outside is night, even if dawn has not yet appeared, I do not save you from pain by sealing you in glass. I save you by showing you where you must let go. I do not pull you out of another's grasp so you may become a lonely creature. I pull you out so your heart will stop forgetting that I am here, seeing every rhythm, holding every breath. You ask me, why must I suffer like this? I answer, because you placed your heart in the hands of one who cannot hold it. It is not because they were cruel that you hurt so deeply. It is because you gave them a place only I can bear. Your heart is not a pet to be caged. It is an eternal tree that only takes root when watered by my everlasting presence. People may promise, but they cannot guarantee. They may love for an hour, but they cannot love for a lifetime. Only I love you with a love that surpasses birth and death. Those who hurt you do not yet understand this, and you did not yet understand it either. But I am teaching you. One day, you will look back and see that your darkest seasons were not the places where your soul died, but where it grew roots, like a tree battered by storms, losing branches but forcing its roots deeper, like cracked soil that makes space for water to seep in. You thought those who arrived and left stole your years, but in truth, they were simply messengers carrying a message you needed to read. You placed your worth in the wrong place. They were not your destiny. They were the lesson that revealed your destiny. And I ask you, do you want to keep living in that cycle? No one can discern that for you. No one can decide that for you. For I did not create you as someone who always needs another to lead them. I created you as one who knows how to hear my voice. Not the sweetness of flattering words, not the empty promises of shallow hearts, but my voice gentle, steadfast, appearing in the silence when all other voices fade. When you stand before a threshold and fear that moving forward may leave you alone, remember, loneliness is only a hallway. Abuse is the prison, and I will never lead you into a prison, my child. I do not want your heart to grow suspicious of every soul. I want it to learn discernment. Some come to drink water, some come to steal the well. I do not ask you to close the well. I teach you to build a fence. Guarding is not doubt, it is wisdom. Do not feel guilty for choosing to protect your heart. I have placed holiness upon your heart, and no one is worthy to enter it unless I invite them to walk with you. And there will come a day when I bring different souls to you, not to replace the one who wounded you, but to reveal what you once believed was an illusion. Love does not require you to shrink yourself in order to survive. They will not demand your silence so they can have their peace. They will not drag your soul downward so they can feel taller. They will not come to you because they need you to fill their emptiness, but because they too are full of the grace I have given. And between them and you there will no longer be negotiation, but the harmony of two souls who both know who the source is. The souls who once left will see this, and they will not understand why. They will ask, what has changed you? You do not need to answer. The peace in your eyes will speak for you. The pain that once defined you will become testimony. You will speak not with lofty words, but through the presence of one who has walked through darkness and does not return to retaliate, but to invite others to step out of it. On that day, you will walk slowly. No more rush. No more chained to the need for approval. You will know how to smile, not to reassure anyone, but because your heart is already at rest. And in that very rest, I will use you to uplift other souls. You are not the source of water, but I will make you a stream that leads them to the source. You are not the light, but I will make you a small lamp that points to the sun. You are not the healer, but I will make you a doorway that leads to the healing hand. And if you must weep once more, let those tears fall into my hands. I will not allow them to fall meaninglessly to the ground. I will turn every drop into a seed. I will use each one to soften the soil hardened by disappointment. I will make your heart grow again stronger, steadier, no longer fragile before fleeting promises. When you leave this place, no one needs to know what you felt. No one needs to hear that you were once betrayed, but they will see how you live, how you hold your heart without trembling, how you walk into a room not to seek acceptance, but to bring peace. And the world, whether it wants to or not, will have to face this truth. A soul touched by me never returns unchanged. Go, breathe, let your footsteps become light, not because life becomes less harsh, but because you have placed the weight of your soul in me, the one who never betrays. Now pray in this way, Lord. Help me to no longer seek acceptance from imperfect hearts, but to stand in your gaze when I grow weary of unkept promises, when I tremble for fear of being left behind. Remind me that I was created to belong to you first. Remove from me the habit of bending myself to fit the expectations of people, and place within me the peace of one who knows they do not need to shrink in order to be loved. Lord, open my eyes to see that pain is not an accusation, but a signpost. When someone walks away, do not let me sink into the question, what am I lacking? But allow me to see that I have forgotten you remained. Gather the fragments of my heart, not to return them to the world, but to place them in your hands, where they can be joined again by eternal love. Lord, do not let me turn weakness into evidence that I am unworthy. Teach me to see it as the doorway you are opening. When the places within me tremble, grant me the courage to offer them to you instead of hiding them. Remind me that your strength is made perfect in weakness, and that the cracks themselves are where I may touch you more deeply. Lord, when I remember the people who have passed through my life, give me gratitude instead of bitterness. Help me understand that no one is born to carry the weight of my soul. Do not let me cling to hands that came only to shelter for a season, then blame them for not becoming a home. Grant me the wisdom to recognize that the only home I have is in you. Lord, heal me of my dependence on praise. Help me no longer thirst for approving eyes in order to feel that I have worth. When the silence of the world frightens me, help me know that you have never been silent. When I fall because I lacked someone's comfort, place in my heart the gentle whisper, I see you, and I am enough for you. Lord, remind me that I was not created to fill anyone's emptiness. When I try to soothe another's loneliness with my own soul, pull me back. When I wear myself down just to keep them from leaving, place me in your arms so I may know that true love does not destroy. Lord, close the doors I am too afraid to close myself. When I fear loss more than I fear being hurt, sever the bonds that do not belong to you. Help me accept that sometimes departure is medicine, and that the early sting saves me from deeper wounds. Lord, teach me to love without confusing giving with self-erasure. Grant me a heart that is gentle yet has boundaries, that opens but does not dissolve. When my kindness is exploited, do not let me become cruel, but also do not let me return to the place that once shattered me. Lord, make you the place I return to, not people. When I am exhausted from guessing who is sincere, let me stop before you where there is no deception. Teach me to choose the better portion, to choose your presence instead of chasing sweet-sounding promises. Lord, help me sit in silence without fearing that I have been forgotten. When I walk through long nights without answers, help me know that silence is not punishment. It is the place where you rebuild foundations, where you restore the parts I have tried to hide. Do not allow me to mistake temporary darkness for abandonment. Lord, help me shift the question from, "Why did they do this to me?" to, "Where am I placing my trust wrongly?" Give me the courage to take responsibility for my soul, no longer giving my heart to hands that cannot hold it. When I break, do not let me run to those who patch with haste, but let me return to you, the one who knows how to make all things new. Lord, grant me peace, not after everyone decides to stay, but even when all may leave. Let me stand firm in your love, not because I am strong, but because you uphold me. Redefine my worth, not by painful memories, not by those who betrayed me, but by the fact that I belong to you, and you never betray. I offer this prayer in the holy name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Do not forget to subscribe and turn on notifications, so that together we may build a strong community of faith